Should you draft Alvin Kamara this year? That and so much more on tonight's episode of the Footballguys Mailbag Show. Victoria, go ahead and start us off here. Should you draft Alvin Kamara this year? He's got a pending possible suspension. We heard about this legal issue that he got in over the offseason. How are you feeling about Alvin Kamara right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm gonna say yes, baby. Draft him. I know I was just doing a draft for a family member of mine right before the show, and he was debating Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, Joe Mixon. He was at pick 12. He said, I don't know about Kamara. He kind of gave me problems last year. I looked it up still. He was still 6th overall in points per game, and you can still get him at a slight discount right now because of all this legal uncertainty. And we got to have a big if here, but if Michael Thomas is healthy, ready to go, in my opinion, that's probably better for Kamara so he's not that only focal point of the entire offense that defenses could key in on like last year. Opens up the playbook a little more for him. I checked after seeing this question, this opener, I had him 10th overall, running back 10 overall for PPR in my Footballguys rankings. After checking that, I'm going to be moving him up to 8th. And I still think that could even be low. He has that ceiling. He's had it every single year that he's been in the league. And you got to be drafting him. Dave, I think you'll be talking about our Footballguys' own Drew Davenport's tweets. So I'll let you all speak to that. But I am definitely drafting him. Don't let this legal trouble scare you. It's likely the league is not going to come down with any discipline action in this season, probably. More likely for next season.
Yeah, and I'm in lockstep with you, Vic. Looking at my rankings right now, I've got him as my running back 8 as well in PPR format. So exactly where you've got him. And really, I mean, if we get some sort of statement saying like Alvin Kamara is not going to be suspended, which we haven't gotten yet, what we're getting is, some it looks like a decision is going to be pushed out until at least next year, which means that his 2021 probably isn't in jeopardy of missing any time. But the only reason I'm not higher on him is because I feel like there's other guys that can put up pretty similar value and don't have that little bit of risk. So DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, right now I have those guys ahead of Alvin Kamara. But if we get confirmation that he is in fact playing a full season, I think I move Alvin Kamara up all the way to RB3, RB4, RB5, way up there, because that's all he does is put up great numbers. And he saw a little bit of a target share dip last year with Jameis Winston, but he was still averaging almost 6 targets per game when Jameis Winston came. His overall season finish was really kind of skewed by playing with Ian Book and Taysom Hill. And, he's had some weird quarterbacks over the last couple of years, but I think that Jameis Winston can still prop him up as a very valuable PPR running back. Troy, what do you have to add to this? I mean, do you feel confident taking Alvin Kamara, or are you just completely off because of that risk?
I am 100% in on Alvin Kamara. And I was just looking at, I appreciate it, Sam. So I was looking at
Swagman himself calling you swaggy. Look at that.
So I was looking at the Footballguys ADP, right? He's currently consensus RB10, which is 4 spots up. So he moved 4 spots up. So he was going as RB14. Obviously, it had to be because people were worried about the suspension, because everyone knows about Kamara's upside. And looking back at last season, Dave, you already touched on it, how it was weird. The QB carousel he had to deal with was disgusting. And also, we know Alvin Kamara is for his pass catching ability, but last year he had 240 rushing attempts. That was a career high. It was just a really weird season. I don't think we're gonna see as many carries from him this upcoming year, but I'm hoping to see more of that target share that we all know and love. So I think with his upside, especially in PPR, Kamara, I feel once we get the 100% confirmed that he's not going to be suspended, he should be no less than top 5. No less than top 5. You got guys I like Joe Mixon. I like Najee. But no, I'm sorry. Even Nick Chubb is going ahead of him. I like Nick Chubb. He doesn't catch passes. Sorry. Kamara needs to be top 5 once everything is 100%, confirmed he's not getting suspended. No less than top 5, y'all.
And, you talk about it. He saw a lot more work on the ground last year. And I think that's something we could probably see a little bit more of this year, because, he's just a great running back at doing everything. And so much of his value in fantasy over the last few years had come from getting those, feather touch, soft check down passes from Drew Brees. That helped him out tremendously, where a guy like Mark Ingram could play that bruising in between the tackles role, take the goal line work, and then Alvin Kamara could just catch balls out of the backfield. And then last year we did see a bit of a shift where his target total went down quite a bit, his rushing went up quite a bit. And now looking at the depth chart in New Orleans, I feel like that might still be the role that he's going to be playing this year, where he is going to be running a lot more because Mark Ingram is back in New Orleans now, but he's 32 years old. He's not going to be able to take 200, 250 carries and allow Alvin Kamara to work in the passing game. So this might just be what we're going to see from Alvin Kamara going forward, but it kind of balances it out. Our Dan Hendry did a study recently where he said that a target in PPR formats is worth 2.5 times what a rush is worth. So you can kind of balance the sliders out and move them up and down. If he's going to lose 30 or 40 targets, but if he's going to see an increase with 150 or so extra carries, it balances out. The downside there is that with more touches, you see an increased chance of injury. So there's a lot of factors that really go into the calculus of trying to project out what Alvin Kamara's season can look like. But at the end of the day, this is something I say all the time. You're not going to regret betting on talent. And Alvin Kamara is one of the most talented running backs in the league. He's going to see 250 to 300 touches this year if he plays. So, yeah, he's that guy right now where if we knew he was playing, he'd probably be going top 3 or top 5. But you can get him at the top to middle of your second round right now. And if he ends up playing a full season, I mean, that's kind of the definition of a league winner, right? Get somebody that you're drafting in round 2 that's putting up top 3 values. So I think we're all kind of in agreement here, right? That we are all pretty happy drafting Alvin Kamara at ADP.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get into the show then. Kind of hard to believe. I was just looking at the schedule today, trying to plan out some mock drafts and whatnot. And I was like, oh my goodness, we are close to the season. Tomorrow is 2 weeks away from kickoff. It's going to be here before we know it. So we've got this show, we've got next week. And then the next time we do a show after next week's show will be 2 days away from kickoff. It'll be here so soon. I'm Dave Kluge. You can find us here every single Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Victoria, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
Yes, I am Victoria Geary. You can find me at FFB_Victoria on Twitter and Instagram. DM me. I know we got drafts coming up. I got a Start Sit article that's going to be out every single week for Football Guys. I can't wait to be putting that out. But please, just as Troy always says, come find me, DM me. Let's win some championships. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and I've been saying that all off season as well, and I just haven't had time to get to my DM. So I am sorry if you have been asking me questions. I promise I will set aside a few hours this weekend and try to answer everybody's questions as best as I can. Troy, same to you though. Let everyone know where they can find you on social media, what you're working on, and just for fun, tell us how many wins do you think? So we got it on record. How many wins are the Dolphins going to have this year?
Oh, I love these questions. Well, you guys can find me at TKig Mode, pretty much on all platforms. Twitter's my home base. Me and my snazzy glasses will be there to help you win championships as well. I got you. In terms of the Dolphins winning, I say we win at least 9 games, y'all. 9 games. It's on record. I think that's fair. I don't think I'm getting too crazy. One thing I would want to stop, since we're on the subject, touch really quickly. I'm excited for Tua. I think he takes a leap forward. I think they're doing a little bit too much in terms of just like overly hyping him. I'm like, he's a grown man. Like, let him do his thing. I just think it's a little too much. But I am excited about the season. If you saw on Twitter floating around Chase Edmonds RB1, he's a value in drafts. We might talk about him later, but draft Chase Edmonds. I don't need to tell you about drafting Waddle and Tyreek, but I'm very excited about the season.
Love it. We cannot wait for football. We've been analyzing this game for the last 7 months, and now we are 2 weeks out from actual real life, meaningful football. For anyone watching the show, we already see some great questions coming in through the chat. Keep dropping those questions in there, and we will get to them at the end of the show. But we are going to go with our pre-submitted questions right now, which you can drop to us on Twitter or send us at mailbag@footballguys.com. And the next question comes in from our good friend Ahan, who says, why is Alec Pierce being drafted outside of the top 75? Troy, start us off here. I feel like we were talking about Alec Pierce as kind of a sleeper, right after the draft. We really like the landing spot. Now he's kind of floating under the radar a little bit. Why is he being drafted as late as he is?
Why? It's because Alec Pierce, for some reason, he's not known as a sexy pick. I feel like when he was drafted, people were surprised by his draft capital. I don't know why some of the people were just lower on him going into the draft. And I guess they're not excited about the number 2 in Indianapolis, but to me, he's primed for an opportunity. They have no other pass catchers there really outside of Michael Pittman, and if you want to count Naeem Hines, fine. But I think Alex Pierce is very talented. He's actually been showing out in camp and during this offseason. Like, we've been seeing some highlight plays. He's been very under the radar. Like I said, outside of the top 75. He's a guy that I think is going to be very involved in the offense. I'm trying to target him very late in my drafts. Again, he's basically free. Like a lot of people aren't on him or just don't want him. There are some, quote unquote sexier names out there, but I like him. I think as the season gets closer, the more I'm starting to really get on. Like I think Michael Pittman, and all of us are enamored with Michael Pittman for obvious reasons, but Matt Ryan can't throw every single target to Michael Pittman. So I think Alec Pierce is going to carve himself a role as the wide receiver too. So yeah, I love this question. I think he's definitely being undervalued in drafts.
Yeah, and Alec Pierce, he's interesting because if you just look at the highlights coming out of camp, I mean, he's made some spectacular highlights so far. He's made, these contested catches and he's ran some really nice routes. But then when you read team reports and listen to what the coaches are saying, it sounds like he also makes a lot of mistakes and, isn't, finding himself in the doghouse here and there by making some, expected mistakes that a rookie could make. So while he's got the upside, there also is a little bit of risk there. But you make a good point. I mean, we have no idea who the wide receiver 2 on the Colts is. I mean, it could very well be Nyheim Hines. He might be number 2 in targets behind Michael Pittman this year. We just really don't know. So, Victoria, talk to us a little bit about Alec Pierce and how you're feeling about him this season.
I do like Alec Pierce as a talent. I just think that, you've got Jonathan freaking Taylor on the team. He's going to be the focal point of the offense. And then Michael Pittman after that, you're kind of just looking for scraps, not necessarily someone that, not saying maybe down the line we couldn't flex Pierce, but I'm assuming that Nyheim Hines is going to be that next pass catcher in line for those targets. The drum beats getting louder and louder out of camp for Nyheim Hines. The preseason games, he's looked good. Frank Reich, head coach, says they can line him up in the backfield. They can put him anywhere in the formation. They have full confidence in him. It's someone you can trust. Someone you can trust on third downs too. He's got, even the offensive coordinator for the Colts is beaming about him. You can line him up anywhere. He can do so many things. He can go in the slot run routes. I just think he might be next in line. And we tend to, this rookie hype, of course, every single year we're so excited for these rookies because it's exciting. It's fun. It's, we're looking forward to it. But we've had a couple unprecedented years over the last couple where rookie wide receivers are just incredible. And for fantasy especially, that's not typically been the case. Probably 2020 and before, it wasn't typically the case, seeing guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase popping off. So I just think we got to temper our expectations a little bit for Alec Pierce. And that being said, if I'm looking at Footballguys ADP, you've got other guys that the drum beats are a little bit louder for. You've got Romeo Doubs for Green Bay going a few spots ahead of Alec Pierce in ADP.
Getting lunch with Aaron Rodgers.
Exactly. I mean, you can't go on Twitter without seeing a Romeo Doubs tweet every single day. You got Nico Collins just before him. KJ Osborne might be he's a similar pick, KJ Osborne there for Minnesota, but Isaiah McKenzie. I mean, these are all values, so I can't fault you if you're taking a shot at Alec Pierce at that point in your draft. I kind of like some of those guys a little bit better.
Oh, sorry, Dave. I'm going to jump in here because I'm looking. Do you guys know who the other Colts wide receivers are?
Paris.
I don't.
Campbell.
Besides
Paris Campbell, right?
We got some talent there. It's just always hurt.
Yeah. But look, you got
Doolin.
You got Desmond Patton,
Doolin.
Michael Strachan, Michael Harris. Like, there's just no
Never heard of her. Never
exactly.
I don't think it matters because this team, when you look at it last year, Carson Wentz only attempted 516 pass attempts last year. Like, this team's identity is to run the ball. And even when they, went out and got Phil Rivers, they were still a run first team. I don't think that they're suddenly going to start airing it out 700 times a game or 700 times a season with Matt Ryan. So I think this team still probably throws somewhere between 500 and 550 times. You know that 28 to 30% of those targets are probably headed Michael Pittman's way. Another 12 to 15% are going Nyheim Hines' way. I just don't know if there's enough meat left on the bone for any other wide receiver besides Michael Pittman to really do much in this offense. I think like the best case scenario is that Alec Pierce can, really show out, carve out a big role for himself. But even then, he's looking at, maybe 90, 100 targets as his absolute ceiling. And he'd have to be really efficient to pay off to find his way into a fantasy starting lineup.
I mean, he's going late enough where it reflects it, right? But there is a little bit of upside, just like you're saying, right? They're going to be a running team. I don't expect him, but if he gets 90 to 100 targets as a rookie, there's there are going to be games where they're going to be behind. You can't run it with Jonathan Taylor, right? It's just they're going to be running it with him all the time. And yes, Naeem Hines is going to be involved, but I just feel like when you're going that late, you're looking for guys. Do they have the opportunity, right? That's what we look for in fantasy, guys with opportunity. I think Alec Pierce, where he's getting drafted, I think that, and also the draft capital they spent on him isn't insignificant. I think that they're going to want him to get involved. He's 6'3", he's big, athletic. He could be, a red zone target as well. So there is some upside. But again, outside the top 75, you're just looking for guys. Are you going to get some type of target share? That's what you're looking for in that range.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, he could carve it up, and yeah, I mean, everybody at this range, you're chasing pure upside at that point. Nobody is a sure thing. Even the guys we talk about that we're excited about, Romeo Dupes and Isaiah McKenzie and these other guys, still are far from sure things. So I think that he kind of settles in where he should be. It's a late round dart throw because there are a lot of question marks there about what his opportunity will look like and what he can do. So I think that his ADP is perfectly fine where it is. Let's go ahead and jump into the next question.
It's time for the question of the week, powered by Sleeper.
As we mentioned last week, we are now working with Sleeper, so you can find all of our podcasts, the Audible, the Dynasty Show, and the Footballguys Mailbag Show on the Sleeper app. Just swipe all the way to the right, hit the podcast button, and you will see a chronological list of the Footballguys podcast. We are thrilled to be partnering up with a fantastic company like Sleeper. But this question of the week that we're going to be focused on Sleeper a little bit comes from Andrew Nordmeyer, and he's saying, in a 10-team league, what are the worst draft spots this year? I love this question. Just for the sake of conversation, let's assume PPR, non-superflex, non-tight end premium, just kind of your basic league with 10 teams here. Victoria, start us off. If you are in a 10-team league, what is the one spot that you do not want to be drafting from?
I cannot stand the very middle. Whenever I get a middle pick anywhere from 5 to 9, if it's a 12-team league, 5 to 8, if it's a 10-team, I hate the middle. I want my decision made for me, Dave. I'm going to steal a fantastic part of your thread you put out earlier today in terms of draft strategies. Clear-cut top 5, I agree with you. I'd say even that 1 through 4 to me is money for a draft spot, or like the end where you can get the turn, the 11th or 12th pick or the 9th or 10th pick. Because in those situations, I know what I'm doing. I'm taking, for those first 4, I'm either taking the top running back, JT, CMC. I'm still in on Austin Eckler as a top running back this year. And then, or one of the 2 top wide receivers. I love Justin Jefferson there. Maybe Jamar Chase. If I'm at the turn, I love taking whatever top running back is still there, maybe a Joe Mixon, maybe an Aaron Jones, and then a tight end, Mark Andrews or Kelsey there at the turn. I cannot stand the middle because I feel like I'm reaching anywhere in the middle. Or you kind of see a guy like Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams. You're kind of, these guys, obviously they've popped off before, but there's just a little uncertainty surrounding their roles this year. I don't want to see tons of uncertainty, but just a smidgen where you're like, I don't feel like I have that pop off, let's go pick. Whereas those other spots I love better. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and it's different because ADP is different on every single website. So going off of Underdog, I hate the 7th pick because once you're at pick 7, then at that point, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Austin Eckler are all gone. And then what do you do from there? Do you, reach a little bit for Stephon Diggs or Dalvin Cook? Do you stick close to ADP and take Derrick Henry? It seems like there's just really no win at that 7 or 8 spot. But then when you look at Sleeper's ADP, it's a little bit different. And you got to realize people are going to adhere to ADP to some extent, even if not treating it like the Bible. And on Sleeper, ADP is a little bit different there. Derrick Henry is getting drafted 3rd overall. Austin Eckler is getting drafted 4th overall. So I feel like if you have the 7th pick and a couple of people in your league are sticking to ADP, you could end up with Justin Jefferson or Dalvin Cook or maybe even Jamar Chase at the end of that first round, which would be fantastic. So, immediately when I saw this question, I was going with, what I've been doing off Underdog all season, which was, wanting a pick inside the top 5 and not wanting anything right after that. But now that I'm looking at Sleeper's ADP, I don't know if there is a bad spot to pick from because I feel like there are a few ADPs that can kind of push your league mates to reach for some players and leave some value hanging at just about every single spot. But, I think I'd agree that towards the very end of the first round is what I don't like because, if people are going heavy at running backs early, then when you're looking at the end of the first round, you're kind of in a position where you either need to pay up a little bit for a DeAndre Swift or a Joe Mixon, or you can settle for Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce, which sounds like a really fun start until you hit the 3-4 turn. And then what running backs do you have? Who's your running back one and your running back two if you start off with Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce? So, yeah, for me, I think it's picking at the end of the first is what I like the least. Troy, what about you?
Sure. And I feel like, especially with 10 teams, though, it changes it a bit. I feel like some of these positions are less painful than a 12-team league. But I'm kind of with like what you guys said and Vic. Like, I hate the middle because I think a lot of it too is even though you're focusing on your draft, you also kind of want to help dictate the flow of the draft in some type of way. Like if you're going running back heavy, it's going to affect what your league mates do, right? So if like I'm at the turn, I can dictate a lot of what's going to happen next. If I'm going like 2 running backs, right? Like it'll impact what's happening after that. But in the middle, I feel like I'm just subject to what everyone else is doing. And I got to reach and make a decision like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? But, you know, if you do enough drafts, then you'll kind of get a system. But I feel like you're just, you are just so affected by what everyone else is doing. And you just have to pick and just do the best you can. And that's why I don't really like the middle spot.
That's a great way to put it. And I think the reason I like being on the ends, especially once you get deeper into the draft, I always feel like when I'm doing that, you know, when I have 2 picks back to back, when I'm picking from the turn, I feel like I always have one pick where I kind of stick with the ADP a little bit. And I say, you know, this is where I'm going to take my value. And then I have one pick where I say, you know what, I'm just going to reach for a guy that I like here. So I'll take one guy that just fell because it's a good value. And then I'll take another guy that I really like, even if it's a round or 2 ahead of value. And I feel like it all balances out. Where I agree with both of you. When you're picking from the middle, it feels like you're kind of just scrambling and taking whatever falls to you at just about every single point in the draft. So I think we're all kind of in consensus here that it's one of the later picks in the first round is what you don't want in a 10-team league. Just want to remind everybody that you can look at the description on YouTube right now and you'll find a link where you can download Sleeper. We'll be partnering with them for the rest of the 2022 season. You'll be able to find all of our podcasts there. Absolutely thrilled to be a part of this. But let's go ahead and jump back into the show with the next question here, coming from T Cook FF saying, what is your favorite wide receiver in this range and why? We're talking about Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, and Mike Williams. Can we just throw Michael Pittman in there and make it, or does that just make it too easy for all of us? All right, we'll go with these four.
That makes it easy. Yeah, that makes it easy. But
he's a tier ahead of these guys.
I don't know. Yeah. Like they'll make it interesting. But here's the I have my answer. Answer.
It's Jalen Waddle.
It's not. It's not. Okay.
Let's hear it, Troy.
It's not. You know what's funny? I knew people were gonna think, and for those who don't know, I am a huge Dolphins fan, but I'm not going Jalen Waddle here. Mm-hmm. I am gonna go Cortland Sutton. I think Cortland Sutton to me has just I mean, all these guys I feel like have upside. DJ Moore, I'm sorry, I'm not in on Baker. Like in terms of just out of these guys, I think he's gonna be just fine. I think he's gonna be heavily targeted, but give me Cortland Sutton with Russell Wilson. I just think if he's not a wide receiver 1, he's going to be on the borderline of being a wide receiver 1. Touchdown upsides there, deep shots are there. Like Cortland Sutton to me is just a screaming wide receiver 1 to me. Mike Williams, if he does anything like he did like beginning of last season, okay, maybe it's him. But I still think that he's the number 2, and that's, you know, in that offense. I think Keenan Allen's still the wide receiver 1 there, at least for right now. So to me, give me Cortland Sutton. I think he has the highest upside in this range. I don't think it's a long shot, but like in terms of a blowout, in terms of competition, but I think Cortland Sutton to me is the wide receiver 1 out of these.
And the first comment we got in on this one, ranking it happy feed in the YouTube chat with Sutton in dead last. And this is a tight one because I'm with you, Troy. Sutton is my favorite guy in this group as well for a lot of the reasons that you laid out. And one thing I'll say is, you know, a lot of people are saying that Russ Wilson might not have it anymore, that he's getting up there in age. Last year he was playing with, you remember that finger, right? You remember seeing that finger flicking, and that was on his throwing hand. And he came back last year. He still had the 3rd most yards in the league on deep pass attempts. I mean, that's what this guy does. And that's where Cortland Sutton wins on the field as a contested catch guy downfield. So I'm with you. I love Cortland Sutton out of this bunch, and he's the guy that I am targeting the heaviest. Vic, I see you nodding along. You kind of been a noted Cortland Sutton hater for years. Did we finally convert you?
Ever.
Oh goodness. I mean, so I actually answered this question yesterday too, and I kind of was like, all right, it was kind of late at night, T. Cook. I'm going to give you that. I'll let you know my thought pattern here. I said, this is very, very, very tight. This is a tough question. I think we got to keep following camp reports here, too, on this Jalen Waddle news. That was a little bit not shocking, but just that he's been kind of limping around, right, Troy? I mean,
yeah, he's going to be fine, I think, for the season. They're just being very careful with him. I think he is dealing with an injury, but they're just, they know the season's about to start. Like, there's no reason to there's no reason to rush him or put a necessary strain. He's catching the ball, but he's not really running around. But I wouldn't be too worried. I think for the beginning of the season, he's going to be just fine. Yeah, it's nothing to be overly concerned about. But yeah, he is dealing with the injury right now. So be mindful, keep up with the camp reports.
Yes.
But for the season, though, there's been no reports to me to saying he's not going to be ready or anything like that.
Right. And something to just keep our eyes on there. And you kind of can make the argument, right, like this kind of in a vacuum. Okay, Courtland Sutton could be the one on his team and DJ Moore could be the one on his team and then kind of go from there. But I'm not looking at it like that at all. Mike Williams, as controversial as maybe this answer would be last year, if he can stay on the field, he has a chance to just dominate. The Chargers offense is one of my most favorite. It's my second favorite, to be honest with you, after my Bills, of course. They're one of the most potent offenses out there, and especially out of these selections. I think that Sutton is definitely just right there with me. All these players have kind of a similar range of outcomes, but yeah, you guys have been beating the Courtland Sutton drum all off season, and you are getting me there. That draft I mentioned I was doing, helping my family member out with earlier, I was kind of saying, take Courtland Sutton as your wide receiver too. I find myself being like, shoot, I kind of like him there. So yes, you guys have definitely warmed me up to Courtland Sutton. I'm going Mike Williams here just because he could usurp Keenan Allen as that wide receiver one in that offense. But
before Dave goes, I was gonna say that Dave has been the Courtland Sutton guy for years. When no one liked Courtland Sutton, and Dave has been pounding that Courtland Sutton drum for years. So I'm not a Courtland Sutton. I'm not gonna call myself a Courtland Sutton guy. I'm just on him this year, but I'm gonna give that credit to Dave. That's been his boy forever. So yeah.
I mean, you guys know who my guys are at this point. Yeah. When it comes to wide receivers, I've got a type. If you are over 6'3", and if you've got a size adjusted speed score that's inside the 80th percentile, I'm in on it. And that's what it is. I've been hyping up Allen Lazard, Zay Jones, Courtland Sutton. These are my guys. Just something about big receivers that can stretch the field are just my favorite types of guys. And that's exactly who he is. And I'm not going to say that DJ Moore is the guy that I'd pick out of this group, but I just want to talk about DJ Moore for a quick second here. There were only 5 players last year that had more total targets than DJ Moore. Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Deontay Johnson, and Cooper Kupp. And then DJ Moore was 6th in targets last year. And, his whole thing, he's never had more than 4 touchdowns in a year. I don't know if Baker Mayfield never more than 4 a year. I mean, this guy is just a target hog, just 1,100 yards every single season. I mean, he's a beast. He just doesn't get in the end zone. So I don't know if Baker Mayfield is suddenly going to turn this into some high-flying offense in Carolina. But I'd say that Baker Mayfield is an upgrade from Sam Darnold. So if DJ Moore sees a little bit of touchdown regression, if he can maintain the same type of target total that he saw last year, and 9.6 targets per game. I mean, that is bonkers. That is absurd usage. And he was playing with, Sam Darnold and Cam Newton and Kyle Allen and all these guys that he's played with over the years. It's just kind of been a little bit of a joke. A little bit of, stability now with Baker Mayfield could help unleash him a little bit. So I'm still taking Courtland Sutton ahead of DJ Moore, but I think that DJ Moore is a really intriguing name here that a lot of people, just look at his season end finish and look at the points that he's put up every single year and are kind of off DJ Moore, but the stage is set for him to absolutely explode this season. We might finally be able to see it.
He had that stretch too in the beginning to middle of last season where he just wasn't putting up barely any points. So if you picked him as your wide receiver one, it was so disappointing. And then you're like, after those first 3 weeks, you're thinking, should I even be starting this guy? So it gets a little, as you said, I don't know if Baker's going to be putting him in the extreme wide receiver one conversation. So that's why I kind of temper my expectations there. Fantastic receiver in real life.
But I
obviously.
think it's probably an upgrade from Cam Newton, who he was playing with last year, because
Oh,
that's when DJ
yeah.
Moore turned ice cold. If
It's
you remember,
100%.
Sam Darnold looked like he was finally good
Oh,
last year. Like the first 4 weeks of the season, Sam Darnold's rushing for 60 yards a game,
that was
just making
nuts.
DJ Moore look like a wide receiver one. And then that wool was pulled over our eyes very quickly after. I mean, I think it lasted all 3 or 4 games, but DJ Moore is a guy who could absolutely smash. I mean, really, like this guy, we could be looking back and say, why did we not see this with DJ Moore? This guy's been pulling 150 targets every single season. How did we not see the writing on the wall? He's a guy that I've been trying to draft a little bit more of recently. But let's go on to the next question. We got a couple left, and then we will get to the chat. This one comes from Benedict USA saying, what round would you target DeAndre Hopkins? His ADP on the Draft Dominator is listed at 91, but he's been available at the end of all of my mocks. That sounds like it might be a technical issue. We might have to reach out to Simon here and ask why DeAndre Hopkins is going undrafted in Football Guys mock drafts, because typically I see him going in like the 7th, 8th, 9th round of drafts that I'm doing. What round would you guys be targeting DeAndre Hopkins with, correct me if I'm wrong, 8-game suspension, right?
I think it's 6.
Is it 6? 6? All right.
Yeah, I believe so. I think anywhere where his value falls, and I'm making sure I'm set with my wide receivers that I'm starting. Obviously, depending on your format, however many wide receivers you have to start, 2 or 3. As long as I'm set there, I'm fine selecting him then once I'm set with those receivers. And a lot of people are off. He's going, like you said, Dave, if you're in a 10-team league, Football Guys ADP has him at 81 overall. As a wide receiver, 36. He's only missing 6 games. And you know what? Worth noting, I looked at their schedule for the Cardinals after when he comes back. Saints, Vikings, Seahawks, Rams, 49ers, Chargers, Patriots, Broncos. I mean, there's some high-flying offenses in that scattered throughout that schedule. They're going to need him. So I'm fine as long as the value is there and you're not reaching for him and you kind of have your guys set where you're not taking him too early, where you're going to have to be scared, if one of your wide receivers gets hurt, that kind of thing. In the 8th or 9th, I'm honestly fine with it. I think it's a little rich there. I'd probably not reach for him till the 10th if he's still there. 9th or 10th is good for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, it's still DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, like the guy, he might have had a little bit of a target share dip last year, might have been a little over reliant on touchdowns. There's a lot of reasons to knock DeAndre Hopkins, but at the end of the day, this is another guy that we can be looking back at the end of the season and say, what were we thinking letting Nuke drop into the 10th round? We were crazy for it. I mean, you want those points at the end of the season when the fantasy playoffs are happening. So, that's, he's a guy that could really help you at the end of the season. Troy, where are you comfortable taking him? Because for me personally, especially in big tournaments where you're hoping for that end of the season push, I'm okay taking him as early as the 7th round.
Yeah, like shout out to Simon Bloom, Football Guys legend. So he actually tweeted something about this today, and I didn't really think about it. Actually, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a lot of DeAndre Hopkins across my leagues, just because when you hear that suspension and all that, you just look at guys that could give you points early. But the price that you're getting him at, the 8th round, 9th round, 10th round, he misses 6 games, but he's going to be available for the next 11 games. So you're going to have DeAndre Hopkins. So you're getting somebody who's going to be at worst a high-end wide receiver 2 at that price tag of round 10. It's an absolute steal. And if you can go wide receiver heavy early, you just have DeAndre Hopkins just sitting on your bench waiting to unleash him for, like you said, the stretch around the end of the season. I think I'm going to start targeting him a little bit more. So I would be comfortable. I think round 8, I think it's fair, because by that time I should have like my starting receivers. I just have like this DeAndre Hopkins, like waiting to just unleash when his season, when his suspension is over. And then I know him and Kyler have the chemistry. That offense is going to be high flying. He's going to get a target share. And we know that Kyler Murray loves to target him in the end zone. I think we should expect something similar, again this year. And I think Marquise Brown's a good filler for the next, for the first 6 games. But yeah, I think 8th, 9th round would be good.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, and I like him at that price. And like we said, it's just so much more important to get points at the end of the year, and that's where DeAndre Hopkins is going to be contributing. This next question comes in from Kyle Prawn, and I love this question. What are your thoughts on hero RB strategy? For people that are unfamiliar, zero RB is, very dangerous because you're hoping that you could have two guys that are going to pop up and be able to put up weekly points for you, guys that you're drafting in the 7th, 8th, 9th round or later. Hero RB is kind of, where you go in the first 1 or 2 rounds and you draft a guy. So you get yourself a Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor early. Maybe you get a DeAndre Swift or an Aaron Jones in round 2. And then you basically punt your RB2 all the way down the board and you draft a slew of guys like Nyheim Hines and Darrell Williams and hope that one of these guys can step up as a serviceable RB2. So, Victoria, what are your thoughts on Hero RB? Do you think that this is something that you're trying to go with this year?
I definitely am somewhere in the middle because I'm not someone who's going to pick my RB1, like you just said, the stud, and then wait to get Nyheim Hines as my running back too. Although I don't disagree with this strategy because we see year in and year out, we get these running back injuries. They're the most injury prone on the field, and you get these guys off the waiver wire and you're fine slotting them into your RB2 spot. I don't hate the approach. I think I'm somewhere in the middle where you could grab, I was going to say a guy like Dameon Pierce, but shoot, he is climbing up these draft boards ridiculously a lot.
Go round 6 the other day.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I can't do that.
That's a little too rich. You can still, I'm not of the proponent to punt that long. I'm in that kind of range where you can take a Chase Edmonds or a Rashad Penny. I like those guys there. Ramondre Stevenson shooting up draft boards. He's in that range. Dameon Pierce, that kind of thing. I just don't want to wait to get to the Rashad Whites or the McKissicks and things like that. So I'm kind of in the middle, but I am always a proponent of choosing a running back with my first pick, unless there's, I got Justin Jefferson there to snipe. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Justin Jefferson is definitely the exception in early round 1. But Troy, how do you feel about Hero RB? And then I'll give my thoughts.
So I like it, but I think what's important, with any strategy, it's very important to your lineup and the scoring system. So let's say that if you're starting 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers, I actually really like Hero RB in that particular setup, right? So let's say I get an Austin Eckler, Jonathan Taylor. Let's say it's full PPR. Let's say I get Jonathan Taylor. I just load up on wide receivers. I'm starting 3 wide receivers and it's 1 point PPR. I think that strategy is excellent. If I could target a guy again like Chase Edmonds, Kareem Hunt as my RB2, I think because that to me is like sounding good. That sounds interesting to me. So I'll absolutely do it in that format. And I think it's a little bit different. I think if you're only starting like 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, half point PPR, I like to get my running backs early in that format. I don't necessarily want to wait, but I think you can still do that in the format. So I'm fine with it. I've done it multiple times. I think if I'm water, I see how the draft goes. If I had a preference, my preference is to get stud running backs early, and then I feel like just wide receiver depth. It's just a deeper position, right? Running back just falls off so quickly in terms of volume, pass catching. But I think the scoring format and how many players you can start is going to impact your decisions.
And I think for best ball, I love Hero RB because then you've got all of these high upside guys that you can just plug in late. You can draft 5 or 6 running backs late in the draft that you're hoping could be serviceable every single week. And the nice thing is you don't have to worry about who to start. So you can draft, Nyheim Hines and Rashad White and, a lot of these guys that we're talking about later on in the drafts. And, Nyheim Hines is going to have some games where he's going to have, 2 catches for 14 yards and no touchdowns and, 3 yards on the ground. And he's going to have other games where he's going to have 8 catches and 2 touchdowns and, put up a 30-point game. And in best ball, it's great because you don't have to worry about that. You can just kind of plug, you draft them and whoever hits is your RB2 that week. And it's great for best ball. But I think in managed leagues where you have to set a lineup, I still really prefer the robust running back approach. You're going to have insurance. I'm okay taking, as many as 3 or 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds of my managed leagues, just knowing that, you've got the depth of the position to get through bye weeks and get through injuries. And then let's say all of these guys hit and you have more running backs than you know what to do with. You got 4 serviceable guys and you've only got 2 running backs on 1 flex spot. There is nothing more valuable on the trade market in a managed league than an RB1. And if you've got an RB1 that you're willing to trade, you can get a haul. You're going to get a wide receiver one and a starting tight end in return, and probably be able to upgrade your quarterback on top of that. So in managed leagues, especially managed leagues that are active with trading, I am still trying to get much more than one running back, because if you're in a managed league and Christian McCaffrey is your hero running back and he pulls a hamstring week 1 and doesn't play for the rest of the season, well, goodbye. Your season's over. I mean, you're not going to win anything. So I still like having a deep slew of high end running backs on managed leagues. Let's go to the last question here, and then we'll hit the chat. And we've already seen some great questions come in the chat. But this last question comes from Brian Fisher. General thoughts on Joe Mixon this year and his value. Joe Mixon is kind of getting drafted at the 1-2 turn. Last year, the concerns with Joe Mixon are that he can't stay healthy. He finally stays healthy for a whole season, gives us a top 3 fantasy season, and for whatever reason, his ADP has not budged year over year. Victoria, start us off on Joe Mixon. How are you feeling about him this year?
Ooh, kind of going off of the last question too. Staying water not only with your draft strategy, but also just with players in general that may have burned you in the past, right? Just stay water with them. I think I've made a mistake. I've not been the Mixon truther that Dave has here ever, really. Even last year, I was always like, I'm not really sure. I didn't have enough shares as clearly as I should have had because he finished so high. Top 7 overall in points per game, too. Not even just that top 3 finish. So that value is wild. At that 1-2 turn, the end of the first, beginning to middle of the second, for a guy that did that well last year, O-line has improved. I'm not gonna. I've stayed water on players now. I'm learning to do that because you miss out on a guy like I missed out on Deebo Samuel last year, thinking, okay, if you think somebody's injury prone and you're kind of avoiding all your drafts, you miss out sometimes on these values. So I gotta stay water. I love Mixon. Especially you're talking about you have a gross pick like we may have mentioned in the middle or the end at that 1-2 turn where you could take a Mixon and a Kelsey or an Andrews there. I love that start. And you know what? You can't be worried about getting stung. I'm open for love. I got my heart on my sleeve for Joe Mixon this year, and he may hurt me, but it's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. So that's my stance there.
Eloquently spoken, Victoria. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you for that. Troy, how are you feeling about Joe Mixon this year?
I feel like I don't have enough Joe Mixon. For whatever reason, there's other guys that I like going around this spot, but if I'm really looking, he set career highs last year in rushing yards and touchdowns, receiving yards, receptions. Like he did everything you wanted him to do. And like he's going like around RB7 or RB8 around that area. And I don't know. Like he's a screaming value and he's on a good offense. He's everything you want in a running back. And I should probably have more shares. Maybe I should just be thinking about him differently. There's just other guys in that area that I also like, but
DeAndre Swift and Aaron Jones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kamara, Barkley's around there. Dalvin Cook, Najee.
Yeah. Joe Mixon set a career high last year in receptions and receiving yards, but still didn't get the receiving work that we wanted. Prior to his injury in 2021, in 2020, I'm sorry, he was seeing like almost 6 targets per game. I mean, he was finally becoming that like pass catching back that we wanted him to be. And then last year, he didn't really see that over the course of a full season, and he was able to make up for it with a ton of touchdowns and a ton of rushing. But he kind of feels like Nick Chubb on a better offense. I feel like that's kind of what you're getting with Joe Mixon. But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Troy. Keep going.
Oh, no. I mean, it's just I agree with everything you said, and I think that just for whatever reason I like other guys better. But maybe I think we just need to look at Joe Mixon differently. And I don't know if some of us are just scarred because of how he was used in years before. I don't know. It's just I think that that's a great point. His offensive line is also better. So it's maybe we should start putting more respect on Joe Mixon's name because like my friend, shout out to my friend Laquan Jones. Like he just took him like, I think with like, or it took him in the first round with like the 7th, 8th pick. At first I'm like, okay, that's kind of high. But for me, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, based off last year. And if you're projecting what you're projecting for this year, it's not that crazy, So I think we're undervaluing him, to be honest.
Let me throw looking at ADP, this sounds ludicrous, but Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon. I mean, these are two guys that are not going to be heavily involved in the passing game. They're both going to see a lot of carries on the ground. I don't know if Derrick Henry should be going a full round ahead of Joe Mixon, especially at his age. He's 29 years old. Joe Mixon's 25 years old. There's a huge age difference there. The age cliff is approaching for Derrick Henry real quickly. Joe Mixon kind of feels like a good arbitrage option. Like if you're going to pass on Derrick Henry in the, top half or the middle of the first round, get Joe Mixon, and it seems like he'll be able to put up pretty similar production for a cheaper draft cost. I mean, am I crazy there for thinking Mixon is going to have a better season than Derrick Henry?
I don't think so.
It's weird saying it out loud, but if we really look at all the factors, it's not crazy. It's just I've learned early on not to doubt Derrick Henry. Like Derrick Henry does things, especially for fantasy, he shouldn't be doing. Somehow he just keeps scoring touchdowns. And again, like he'll literally do absolutely nothing for a game, just get stuff, and then he'll go for 90 yards. So Derrick Henry to me is just an anomaly, but I understand what you're saying. If we're just looking at the numbers and looking at the possibilities, it's not crazy. But just Derrick Henry, I know he's 29. He's coming off a foot injury. He's everything you don't necessarily want in a running back to draft, but somehow would we
still going top 3 on Sleeper?
Exactly. Would we be surprised if he finished top 3 Sleeper? No, he's Derrick Henry. Like he's just not human. So, but your statement and question, I think, are definitely fair.
And we're so insulated in our, analyst bubble where we come to a consensus and don't stray from that too much. In my home league group chat, we were just talking the other day, and everybody thinks that Derrick Henry should be the consensus 101. And these aren't people who are plugged in. They haven't been analyzing the game all season. But to them, it's just, big man, score a lot of points, draft him first. I mean, that's kind of how some people look at this. And so, I totally get it. But let's go ahead to the chat questions. We got about 12 minutes left here before we got to sign off. And I feel bad. Somebody said that we missed their question last week. So let's hit his first. We got Eric White in the chat saying, not a big fan of drafting my quarterback early, but would I be crazy to go Diggs and Josh Allen? I mean, this is kind of what's been happening all offseason in best ball. Josh Allen is going in the early third round because people that take Diggs in the mid first, they want to make sure that, or in the late first, they want to make sure that they're getting Josh Allen, and they don't want to wait and hope that he's there at the end of the fourth. So they're taking him early third round. It's kind of what you got to do if you want that Buffalo stack. Vic, as the Buffalo fan, is it crazy to go Diggs and Allen that early?
I actually was just on a Bills-centric podcast last night, Code of Conduct, shout out, talking about fantasy stuff, and a lot of people were asking me, should you take Josh as your number 1 overall pick in redraft, which we know we don't typically don't want to be doing that, right? I think I like this better if you are in a best ball league format, of course, with the stack there. I think I worry a little bit more in a normal redraft format because to me that running back drop off, that running back cliff after those top 5, and then you've got the next to top 10 after that, to me, they're just not as sexy. Like, I'm not sure I want to have Zeke as my running back 1. Now, we have not been tainting Zeke's name on this show. We still believe in this man. He's been a running back 1 every single season. I'm not trying to, to go off of that. I don't feel as great leaving with Josh and Diggs, and then you kind of have that running back drop off as we've been talking about. I don't think it's crazy though. That's what I want to say. I don't think it's crazy. They're projected to go to the Super Bowl. They're going to be putting up there. They have a crazy first 6 or 7 games. It's a tough schedule for the first 6 or 7 games. That is what worries me. That maybe we don't see Josh is going to be a beast in real life, and he's still going to set the league on fire. But maybe he's stifled a little bit with these defenses that he's going to face in the first half of the season. That's my worry. I think you're missing out on other value where you could get a nice top 3 tight end, top 3, top 4, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Kelsey, that kind of thing. And you're losing out on that running back value. So I just wouldn't personally do it. I don't think it's crazy though.
Yeah. And I really struggle to pay up for Josh Allen just because, no disrespect to Josh Allen. The man's back-to-back QB1s, are back-to-back the QB1, arguably the best quarterback in all of fantasy football. But just from a fantasy standpoint and a projection standpoint, I don't know if there's a huge gap between the top 6 quarterbacks in general. Josh Allen might be a little bit safer and he might have a little bit of a higher ceiling. But when you look at Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, all of these guys have a pretty similar range of outcomes. And for me, that's just why I struggle, because so many people want to get that Diggs Allen stack that you got to pay up for Josh Allen. I'd just rather wait and take whichever of those top 6 that I just mentioned falls to me, which typically ends up being Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts. But it's just crazy to think about. Like, look at some of the receivers that we were talking about earlier. These guys that are going in the 3rd round with similar ADPs to Josh Allen. We're looking at Michael Pittman and Cortland Sutton. And then when you look in the 6th round, you're looking at guys like Devonta Smith. So would you rather have Josh Allen and Devonta Smith, or would you rather have Michael Pittman and Kyler Murray? That's the type of value that you're giving up if you're paying up for Josh Allen. So I think I like Josh Allen, and there's a very good chance that he finishes as the overall QB1. I just don't know if it's worth, 4 rounds ahead of Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray for what could end up being an extra 1.5 points per week.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here. I was gonna jump in here, just agree. And I'll say, like, I understand the temptation. And there have been times in the past, right? We do this with the top quarterbacks a lot. You guys, we've done it with Lamar Jackson, we've done it with Patrick Mahomes. Like, you get these guys early, but just like I said, it's the opportunity cost. Like, you are taking them and they're going to be good. Like Josh Allen, he's not gonna suck, right? But the problem is, just like you said, there's other quarterbacks that are going to be in a similar range that you're getting rounds later. And there's guys like, even like a Trey Lance, he's going like in the 7th, 8th round. He has the upside to, again, I'm not saying QB1 overall, but enough points where you can focus on your other positions where you have multiple of them, right? When you have multiple running backs, you're starting multiple wide receivers. So that's why I just don't recommend spending up for a Josh Allen. I understand the appeal of the stack, but there's just other guys, like Dave said, they're going to be finishing so within that range. I just wouldn't spend up on them.
Yeah. Agreed there. Now let's go on to the next question. And this one comes in from YouTube. Jason in the chat is asking us, why is Deontay Johnson so low? I feel like he can recreate what he did last year if Pickett is the quarterback. Real quickly, I'll let you guys talk about this, but I'll start off with this. I just don't think that he will. I like Deontay Johnson. I think he's a very good player, but looking at the target competition there, Najee Harris is going to demand somewhere between 80 and 100 targets. Pat Freiermuth is going to demand 60 to 80 targets. And then we're looking at George Pickens right now, who has been getting wild reviews out of camp and is just tearing up Pittsburgh. He's going to command targets. Chase Claypool is going to command targets. And I can't help but feel like all of these guys operate on different parts of the field. Deontay Johnson operates primarily on the short parts of the field with the screens and the slants across the middle. And with Big Ben getting up there in age, he didn't have the arm strength anymore. He just had those timing routes down pat with Deontay Johnson and fed him over 160 targets last year. My fear with Deontay Johnson is that he's just going to see his target share dip a little bit as target shares across the entire wide receiver core flatten out. So I like Deontay Johnson, the player, but I think looking at his contract, people are putting him up there in the Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin conversation. Clearly, based on how the Steelers paid Deontay Johnson, they do not view him as that type of receiver. So I like Deontay Johnson, but I think his ADP is kind of fair. What do you guys have to add about Deontay?
So I'll say that I'm surprised they even paid him at all, because Steelers normally don't pay their wide receivers. So the fact they even gave him like that extension, I think that does show how they value him. Deontay Johnson's, to me, one of the steals of the draft, right? Because I think what Dave said is accurate. Like Ben Roethlisberger's arm and not being a noodle arm, that's why Deontay Johnson thrived. And also he's just really freaking good too. But I think it was a combination of that. With Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, I don't know how it's going to shake out, right? Maybe he has more rapport with Pickens. Maybe he has more rapport with Chase Claypool. We just don't know. It's just he had 169 targets last year and 107 receptions. I don't know if we're going – that's asking a lot. It's asking a lot, but I feel like the value of wide receiver 19 – I love that. You can get him as your wide receiver 2 or 3, depending on your build. So I think that I love Deontay Johnson where he's going. I think he is too low because of his potential upside. If he sees anywhere, even within the stratosphere of what he did last year in terms of target range, he's an absolute steal. So I love the question. I am trying to target him as much as I can, but there are concerns that he might not recreate what he did last year because there's no Big Ben.
Yeah, and the market definitely adjusted early in the offseason. Deontay Johnson was getting drafted as top 10, top 12 guy. And then the draft happened and we realized, oh, wow, the Pittsburgh Steelers are actually going into camp with a QB room of Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and Kenny Pickett. And then Deontay Johnson started to fall down draft boards. I feel like where he's at right now, like you said, wide receiver 19, I feel like that's a perfectly fair value for Deontay Johnson. I got no qualms about that. Let's move on to the next one, and I think we're all going to be in agreement on this one. We could probably just give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Anthony in the chat is saying, in a 12-team keeper auction league, I can keep any of these 3-4 players. Which should I keep? Javonte Williams, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson. I don't even think Ramondre Stevenson belongs in that conversation.
No.
Are we all in agreement there?
Yes.
Yeah, you're keeping Javonte, Akers, and Dobbins. Next question, and oh my goodness, we could do a whole show on this. Did you guys see the report today? Kmeyer016 in the chat is saying, are you worried about Michael Carter limiting Breece Hall's upside? Troy, what's the report? I know you saw it. Tell us.
Yeah, about apparently Michael Carter's the RB1 or something. Like, what kind of nonsense was that? I was like, I thought my eyes were gonna fall out of my face when I read that. Like, there's absolutely no possible way this is real. Because if so,
that's why Troy's got the glasses on. Actually, before the show, he saw that
to keep my eyeballs in my head. I was, I'm almost speechless when I read that because it's just, I feel like that wasn't even a possibility. And I still, and maybe it's just Cam talk. I feel like Breece Hall is just much more talented, and hopefully he's just a rookie that needs to maybe figure some things out. But I don't know. I'm speechless, right? Because when I saw that, it scares you. You know, you don't want to see that. But I say that let's monitor it. It's possible you don't get reports like that just out of nowhere. I'm trying not to take too much stock in it. I think Breece Hall's still the guy, but let's just say I'm paying more attention than I was before. At first, I thought Michael Carter was dust. Now I'm like, let me monitor this situation a bit.
So what I will say, over the last few years, we've seen all of these very talented rookie running backs do take some time to get up to speed. Like Cam Akers, it took him half a season to beat out Malcolm Brown. If you remember, I can't even remember who it was ahead of J.K. Dobbins on the depth chart, but it took J.K. Dobbins. It wasn't until like the final 6 games of the year.
Or was it someone else?
It was Gus Edwards, and there was somebody else there. I can't even remember, but it was like a joke that they drafted J.K. Dobbins early, and it took him, almost 2/3 of the season to carve out a role. Even Jonathan Taylor could not pass up Marlon Mack on the depth chart for half a season. So, I mean, I'm not that concerned about it either. Maybe early in the season, you'll see Michael Carter, with a bigger workload than expected. But I think you should buy the dip on Breece Hall. This guy's a phenomenal athlete. Yeah, just, if Breece Hall starts off the season not looking all that great, go out and trade for Breece Hall because he is good enough that he will take over this backfield by the end of the season. And he is up there as, looking at a prospect. He's up there with Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley. I mean, this dude can ball. He is going to be just fine. Let's go on to the next question. And Victoria, start us off here. Late round dart throw, Rondale Moore or Jalen Tolbert? Who do you prefer out of these two?
I've been beating the Tolbert drum for a while, but we saw Jerry Jones, Mr. Jones himself, saying today that Michael Gallup will not start the season on PUP. I mean, I say for now, right? They still have some time. That's very, very interesting. That doesn't mean Michael Gallup's going to be ready to go week 1, but that kind of gives me a little bit more optimism for him ready to go there. I think I'd rather take a shot on Rondale Moore because of that. But both of these guys are nice late round picks. I'm targeting both of them in those later rounds. But I'm going to go Rondale Moore just because of that open opportunity there.
I'm with you. I'm team Rondale as well. We talked about him a little bit last week. I made the parallels to Deebo Samuel and kind of the narrative surrounding him before his breakout and how Rondale Moore kind of has the same sort of narrative. Troy, real quickly before we log off here, Rondale Moore or Jalen Tolbert, who do you prefer as a late round dart throw?
Tolbert.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Well, got a split decision here. I wish we could help you out a little bit more than that, Shade 721, but hopefully what I recommend is going back, look at last week's episode with Victoria. Yes. We had a good conversation with Jeff Bell. All three of us were talking about Rondale Moore at length. But want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Football Guys Mailbag Show, which you can find now on the Sleeper app. Before we log off, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Dave Kluge, follow Victoria at FFB_Victoria, follow Troy at TKingMode, and be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/footballguys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.